Hey there. Today I received the book that I ordered. It's entitled The Daily Stoic, written by Ryan Holiday and Stephen Hanselman. So when I first opened the book, it opens up with the quotation by Seneca, which says, "Of all people, only those are at leisure who make time for philosophy. Only they truly live, not satisfied to merely keep good watch over their own days. They annex every age to their own. All the harvest of the past is added to their store. Only an ingrate would fail to see that these great architects of venerable thoughts were born for us and have designed a way of life for us." So, in their introduction, it's very interesting because it read as I start: "The private diaries of one of Rome's greatest emperors, the personal letters of one of Rome's best playwrights, and the wisest power brokers, the lectures of a former slave in exile turned influential teacher. Against all odds and the passing of some 2 millennia, those incredible documents survive. What do they say? Could these ancient and obscure pages really contain anything relevant to modern life? The answer, it turns out, is yes. They contain some of the greatest wisdom in the history of the world. Together, these documents constitute the bedrock of what is known as Stoicism, an ancient philosophy that was once one of the most popular civic disciplines in the West, practiced by the rich and the impoverished, the powerful and the struggling alike in the pursuit of the good life. But over the centuries, knowledge of this way of thinking, once essential to so many, slowly faded from view. Except to the most avid seekers of wisdom, Stoicism is either unknown or misunderstood. Indeed, it would be hard to find a word dealt a greater injustice at the hands of the English language than Stoic. To the average person, this vibrant, action oriented, and paradigm shifting way of living has become shorthand for emotionlessness, given the fact that the mere mention of the philosophy makes most nervous or bored. Stoic philosophy. On the surface, it sounds like the last thing anyone would want to learn about, let alone urgently needed at the center of the course of their daily life. What a sad fate for philosophy that even one of its occasional critics, Arthur Schopenhauer, would describe as the highest point to which man can attain by mere use of his faculty of reason. Our goal with this book is to restore Stoicism to its rightful place as a tool in the pursuit of self mastery, perseverance, and wisdom. Something one uses to live a great life rather than some esoteric field of academic inquiry. Certainly, many of the history's great minds not only understood Stoicism for what it truly is, they sought it out, like George Washington, Walt Whitney, Walt Whitman, Frederick the Great, Eugene Delacroix, Adam Smith, Immanuel Kant, Thomas Jefferson, Matthew Arnold, Ambrose Bierce, Theodore Roosevelt, William Alexander Percy, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Each read, studied, quoted, and admired the Stoics. The ancient Stoics themselves were no slouches. The names you can encounter in this book, like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, belong to, respectively, a Roman emperor, a former slave who triumphed to become an influential lecturer and a friend of the Emperor Hadrian, and a famous playwright and a political advisor. These were Stoic like Cato the Younger, who was an admired politician. Zeno was a prosperous merchant, as several Stoics were. Clinthus was a former boxer and worked as a water carrier to put himself through school. Chrysippus whose writings are now completely lost, but tallied more than 700 books, trained as a long distance runner. Posidonius served as an ambassador. Musonius Rufus was a teacher, and many others. Today, especially since the other book published as The Obstacle is the Way, Stoicism has found a new and diverse audience, ranging from the coaching staff of the New England Patriots and Seattle Seahawks to rapper LL Cool J and broadcaster Michel Tafoya, as well as many professional athletes, CEOs, hedge fund managers, artists, executives, and public men and women. What have all these great men and women found within Stoicism that others missed? A great deal. While academics often see Stoicism as an antiquated methodology of minor interest, it has been the doers of the world who found that it provides much needed strength and stamina for their challenging lives. When journalist and Civil War veteran Ambrose Bierce advised a young writer that studying the Stoics would teach him how to be a worthy guest at the table of the gods, or when the painter Eugene Delacroix, famous for his painting Liberty Leading the People, called Stoicism his consoling religion, they were speaking from experience. So was the brave abolitionist and Colonel Thomas Wentworth Higginson, who led the first all black regiment in the US Civil War and produced one of the most memorable translations of Epictetus. The Southern planter and writer William Alexander Percy, who led the rescue efforts in the Great Flood of 1927, had a unique reference point when he said that Stoicism, that when all is lost, it stands fast. As would the author and angel investor Tim Ferriss when he referred to Stoicism as the ideal personal operating system. Other high-powered executives like Jonathan Newhouse, CEO of Condé Nast International, have agreed. But it's for the field of battle that Stoicism seems to have been particularly well designed. In 1965, as Captain James Stockdale, future Medal of Honor recipient, parachuted from shut-up plane over Vietnam into what would ultimately be a half-decade of torture and imprisonment whose name was on his lips, Epictetus. Just as Frederick the Great reportedly rode into battle with the works of the Stoics in his saddlebags, so too did Marine and NATO commander General James Mad Dog Mattis, who carried the meditation of Marcus Aurelius with him on deployments in the Persian Gulf, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Again, these weren't professors but practitioners, and as practical philosophy they found Stoicism perfectly suited to their purposes. From Greece to Rome to today, Stoicism was a school of philosophy founded in Athens by Zeno of Citium in the early 3rd century BC. Its name is derived from the Greek stoa, meaning porch, because that's where Zeno first taught his students. The philosophy assert that virtue, meaning chiefly the four cardinal virtues of self-control, courage, justice, and wisdom, is happiness. And it is our perception of things, rather than things of themselves, that cause most of our trouble. Stoicism teaches that we can control or rely on anything outside that what Epictetus called our reasoned choice. Reasoned choice, our ability to use our reason to choose how we categorize, respond, and reorient ourselves to external events. Early Stoicism was much closer to comprehensive philosophy like the other ancient schools, whose names might be vaguely familiar: Epicureanism, Cynicism, Platonism, Skepticism. Proponents spoke of diverse topics, including physics, logic, cosmology, and many others. One of the analogies favored by the Stoics to describe their philosophy was that of a fertile field. Logic was the protective fence, physics was a field, and the crop that all these produced was ethics, or how to live. Stoicism progressed, however, it focused primarily on two of these topics, logic and ethics. Many its way making from Greece to Rome, Stoicism became more practical to fit the active, pragmatic lives of the industrious Romans. As Marcus Aurelius would later observe, I was blessed when I set my heart in philosophy, that I didn't fall into the sophist trap, nor remove myself to the writer's desk, or chop logic, or busy myself with studying the heavens. Instead, he, and that's Epictetus and Seneca, focus on a series of questions not unlike the ones we continue to ask ourselves today. What is the best way to live? What do I do with my anger? What are my obligations to my fellow human beings? I'm afraid to die. Why is that? How can I deal with difficult situations I face? Or how should I handle the success or power that I hold? These weren't abstract questions. In their writings, often private letters or diaries, in their lectures, the Stoics struggled to come up with real actionable answers. They ultimately framed their work around a series of exercises in the three critical disciplines. First is the discipline of perception. That's how we see and perceive the world around us. Second is the discipline of action. That's the decision and actions we take and to what end. And thirdly, the discipline of will. How we deal with the things we cannot change, attain clear and convincing judgment, and come to a true understanding of our place in the world. By controlling our perceptions, the Stoics tell us we can find mental clarity. In directing our actions properly and justly will be effective. In utilizing and aligning our will, we will find the wisdom and perspective to deal with anything the world puts us before or put before us. It was their belief that by strengthening themselves and their fellow citizens in these disciplines, they could cultivate resilience, purpose, and even joy. Born in the tumultuous ancient world, Stoicism took aim at the unpredictable nature of everyday life and offered a set of practical tools meant for daily use. Our modern world may seem radically different from the painted porch, or they call the Stoa Poikili, of the Athenian Agora and the Forum and the Court of Rome, but the Stoics took great pains to remind themselves that they weren't facing things any different than their own forebears did, and that the future wouldn't radically alter the nature and end of human existence. One day is as all days, as Stoics like to say. One day is as all days, as Stoics like to say, and it's still true, which brings us to where we are right now. So, this is a book that is divided into several parts, in three parts: the discipline of perception, the discipline of action, and the discipline of will. So it's like a daily devotional thing. So like if I pulled over to April 10th, which is today, it is such a very short reading that we can do. But just an example, I'm going to read what April 10th entry talks about. And April 10th is actually part of the first part, which is the discipline of perception. And I would read, judgments cause disturbance. Epictetus wrote in Echiridion number 5, he said, "It isn't events themselves that disturb people, but only their judgments about them." The samurai swordsman Musashi made a distinction between our perceiving eye and our observing eye. The observing eye sees what is. The perceiving eye sees what things supposedly mean. Which one do you think causes us the most anguish? An event is inanimate, it's objective. It simply is what it is. That, that's what our observing eye sees. This will ruin me. How could this have happened? Ugh, it's so and so's fault. That's our perceiving eye at work, bringing disturbance with it and then blaming it on the event. So, a short reading like this can stir up our sense of, I would say, the way we think about the perceiving eye and the observing eye. So it's like a daily thing, maybe secondary or next to Bible reading. If you want to, to observe how the Stoics would think, like Seneca and Epictetus, this is a good book to read, because it's just a very, very short entry every day. And this would also encourage us to, why don't we write our daily journal, especially during these times that we are on self-quarantine. It's not easy, but if you take it one day at a time, live your life one day at a time, sooner or later you will find out that everything makes sense. So wherever you are, whatever you do, think about how you can survive the day, survive the month, survive the year, because it's possible. So thank you so much for deliberating with me and thinking things like how the Stoics in the past lived their lives. But at the same time, try to be unique. Try to live your life the way you wanted it to be, because life is what we make it. And remember, all these things that come into our laps have deeper meaning. It's probably God's gift, all these things. So, but till next time, thank you.